Get started. My name is Kevin Callahan, and I'm here with Pete Patzke, and we're going to do an oral history interview, get some of his stories about his time with the Northwest Airlines History Center. And we can take a break anytime you need it or whatever. And we're here at his home at St. Andrew's Village in Mahtomedi. Today's date is October 18th, 2012. And let's see, I'll start with a little bit about your background and maybe take it in order. So, what's your full name?
Henry Patzke.
And how do you spell your name?
Patzke.
And do you go by other names or nicknames?
Yeah, everybody calls me Pete.
Yeah. And how did you get the nickname? Was that?
My grandfather.
Yeah.
Lived on us when I was born, and he was a Henry and didn't particularly like the name.
Yeah.
So he started calling me Pete, and I was stuck with Pete.
Yeah.
Until the day I got drafted.
Oh.
That's the first time anybody started calling me Henry.
Yeah. Did you have any other nicknames in the service that you can repeat or anything?
No,
okay. Well, let's see. So, what's your date of birth?
29-25.
And how old does that make you today?
87.
And could you tell me a little bit about your parents and briefly a little bit about their background?
Sure. My mother was born in Wyoming, allegedly the first white child born at Fort Yellowstone.
Oh, really?
Huh. My grandfather was the hospital steward for the post there. He came over from Germany in the 1870s at some time and lived to a very ripe old age. We've never really figured out how old he really was, because it's somewhere between 96 and 102.
Wow.
Depending on the accuracy of his age, like on the ship coming over Dallas Island.
Did he didn't have to like bring a birth certificate? I suppose they didn't have necessarily good records.
No, in fact, there's a story after he was in this country for a while, he actually lied about his age so he could join the army.
Is that right?
Yeah, apparently they had a 30-year-old cut off for joining at that time the cavalry.
So he was in the
so he fudged a couple of years.
Was he in the First World War or before that? Or?
No, before that. It was in the, we spent a lot of time in the Wyoming and Montana territories. And then later, actually, at the end of the Spanish-American War, they spent several years in Hawaii. And that's where my mother graduated from high school in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And then they came back to Fort Snelling, where he was here until he was discharged, I think, in 1911.
Boy, I bet he had some experiences.
He did. I wish we would have had a setup like this around. He used to tell some pretty weird stories.
Yeah. So where were you born?
In White Bear Lake.
Oh, really?
Yep. And then when I was 4 or 5 years old, we moved into the St. Paul Midway district. Then after he got married, we decided we'd like the place at a lake, but we couldn't afford both a place in town or a place at the lake. So we compromised with Mahtomedi.
So you spent most of your adult life in Mahtomedi?
Well, an awful lot of it, yeah.
Yeah.
We moved for a few years and spent it in Ridgefield and a couple of years in Burnsville.
Yeah.
We always seem to come back.
I grew up in White Bear Lake, only a few miles from where we are right now.
Oh, right?
Yeah. So, did you have any siblings?
Yep. I had 3 brothers and 5 sisters. And I'm the end of the last of the Mohicans.
Were you the youngest, or?
I was, no, I had 2 younger sisters.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm the last one to still be kicking.
Well, where did you attend school? Did you attend school in St. Paul or
In
White
St.
Bear?
Paul, right.
What schools did you attend?
St. Mark's and St. Agnes and St. Paul, and then I went to college for a couple of years at St. Thomas.
Okay, and what years approximately would that have been when you were in the 30s or 40s?
In the 30s at St. Mark's and up to 42 in the St. Agnes, then the war years. And
yeah. So you were in St. Paul during the Depression period.
during the Depression, right?
And I assume at that point you're starting to have memories and everything. You're old enough to
Oh, sure.
remember. Was there any problem with the Dust Bowl or any of that around here, or was that more out west?
More south and west.
Yeah,
I think it was more Kansas and Colorado and Missouri.
yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
What kind of early jobs did you have? I would imagine during the Depression it'd be difficult to have found any kind of work.
Gas and the gas station.
Yeah,
And greasing cars, and also worked at a florist shop for a while.
yeah.
My dad was big on raising flowers, and that's through his connections I ended up with a job with the florist.
Did he do that as a hobby or?
Strictly as a hobby, other than he did showed an awful lot of iris and peonies at the state shows.
Oh, really? At the fairgrounds?
Well, it was the time for them blooming is earlier.
Yeah.
It's June and July. But,
So they're pretty faded by the Labor Day.
Pretty faded, right.
And what part of St. Paul was this?
Midway District.
Yeah. So as you were growing up as a young man, then let's see, how old would you have been when Pearl Harbor and the war started?
16, 17.
Yeah. So you were too young to be going in right away.
Right.
Yeah.
My brother was a reserve officer in the Army.
Oh, he was.
And he got called up about the 11th of December of 41, and by the middle of January he was on a ship heading for the South Pacific.
Is that right? Wow. So the family was sort of left here, and he was over in the Pacific?
Yep.
What did he do during the war?
He was an infantry captain and company commander of an infantry unit. They were the first Army unit to go on the Guadalcanal and relieve the Marines.
Oh, okay. So just at the time that the Marines were just finishing up and pulling out, he would have gone in.
But they were still there, pretty active.
Yeah.
Very active.
Did he stay on Guadalcanal, or did he have other places?
Well, they there after they cleaned up Guadalcanal, they went to R&R in I think the Fiji Islands.
Oh.
And then back to Bougainville was the next island in the chain, and eventually up to Leyte in the Philippines.
So was he involved with the Philippines campaign? That lasted many months, I guess.
Well, he was there for dang near pushing 4 years before he got home.
Yeah. Wow. So he had a whole military experience during the Second World War.
Yep.
And then, as a captain, was this a fighting unit or a support unit, or what was he doing?
It's a regular infantry.
So he was in the fighting. Oh. Did he record his stories in any books or anything?
I have no idea. He might have.
Yeah.
It seems to me they did, because it seems to me that the Purple Heart Association
Yes.
did something like that
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
And I think he participated in that.
And if I was going to look that up, what is his name? And his rank was captain?
Yeah. Joseph
Patzke.
Yeah.
And his unit would have been
164th Infantry.
okay. So you're 16 and World War II starts. What do you have any memories of Pearl Harbor? Anything what you were
I
doing?
remember hearing about it.
Yeah.
My sister and I had gone to the movies on that Sunday afternoon, and we stopped at that Bridgman place down on 7th and St. Peter and St. Paul.
Yeah.
And that's where we heard about it. And then after we got home, I know it was quite discussion with my grandfather, who was living us with us then.
What were people's reactions? You know, they have every year they have Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day, and the number of people that remember it is decreasing all the time. But what was your kind of reaction, or what people?
Well, we started worrying about it when everybody was. For instance, we were worried about my brother as a start,
Yeah.
because we knew it wouldn't be long before he'd be called up.
Yeah.
And I don't know, somewhat of even some of my friends in our class. I was on the younger end of my class in high school at that time. But we had a couple of 18-year-olds and 17-year-olds, and immediately went off and enlisted.
Well, everybody kind of knew or expected they were going to either get drafted or they'd be enlisting if you were a certain age.
Right.
Then.
Exactly.
And did your brother, for example, did he go in eventually? Your brother?
No, my other brother had died
Oh.
before that.
Okay. So did you finish your high school?
Yes. Yeah, that's one thing my brother told me. Wait for the draft. Don't bother enlisting.
Yeah. Well, things were a little different than, I think, as I understand it, there were so many people enlisting that they needed to get control because you had to train people. So there was there were so many people enlisting. The draft was to slow down the flow of people coming into the system.
Well, the problem was they didn't have any trainees.
Yeah.
Trainers.
Yeah. Well, they had to set up training eventually 16 million people, and that was a big problem.
All of a sudden, somebody that figured they were a lifelong private in the Army was a drill sergeant or something overnight.
So, while you were in high school, did you have any particular jobs other than working in the gas station, or?
No, we did. I remember in our senior year, we spent, I think it was 3 afternoons a week. They'd cut out our classes, and we were down to a place called the WPA, or the Works Progress.
Yeah. Did they give you some work?
Oh yeah, they had us in this particular area. They were teaching us how to repair aircraft engines.
Is that right? Huh. And where did you go for that?
Well, it was in a building down by the old marketplace in St. Paul, somewhere down around 9th or 10th Street,
Sure.
Jackson, Sibley,
Yeah.
somewhere down that area.
And then what kind of aircraft engines what was it for?
It was always the same engine. We'd build it up and tore it down, and build it up and tore it down. And it was it was a pretty good-sized engine, but more what they would use on maybe advanced trainers or something like that.
And the WPA was doing this.
I don't think that's the right.
It was a government program for training.
I'm trying to think what it was. CY. No.
It's some other
kind of
title.
Operation.
Yeah. And what was the idea behind that? Were you getting training to be a mechanic or something?
Theoretically.
So that's what got you started in terms of mechanical things.
Not really.
Oh.
Not really. It really didn't have anything to do with anything.
So how long did you tear the engine apart?
Oh, I did most of that senior year in high school. We were doing it.
Yeah.
Like I say, it was at least 3 days a week, and it might have been more than that.
Was it something where you'd also get credit in school, or was
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Well, when did you graduate from high school?
43.
And then after your graduation, did you get drafted, or
You bet.
how soon was that process?
Well, I really signed up for the draft on my birthday.
Yeah.
At the end of August, and by the 10th of October, I had the letter from my neighbors and friends advising me that I had been selected.
Yeah. So in October of '43, then was there a period of time before you were actually went down and were inducted, or was that happened pretty quick?
About 3 or 4 weeks.
And then where were you inducted?
Fort Snelling.
And what do you remember about the induction, if anything? Did they make you? Did they give you shots or make you swear an oath or something?
Oh yeah, we did all that. Put you through the long line of running the physicals, and
Yeah.
if you pass the physical, they start giving you the shot.
Yeah. How long was the process? Was it like one day you were done, or?
Well, it was pretty much that way, but
Yeah.
I think the one thing I do remember is we got partway through it, and all the people that were doing the physicals all took off for lunch. And left everybody else like standing all in a big long line, all embarrassed. And they come back from lunch, they didn't offer us any. They just started the line up some more.
Well, how long were they gone for lunch? Like half an
Oh, I
hour?
don't know, an hour, probably.
Really? So you're just standing there
Sure.
for an hour?
Right.
Okay.
That's the Army way.
Well, I guess that was the. They had the power, and you didn't, I guess, at that moment, huh? Well, so after induction, was your active duty started right away, or was there a period of time when they?
Yeah, it started right away. I became a problem for him because he couldn't find proper size shoes for me.
Okay.
So when my class went on, I ended up staying in Fort Snelling for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. What was with your feet? Were they?
Not just an odd size, I guess.
Oh, huh. You don't have like unusually large feet or something.
No, I didn't do it. I thought it was a very peculiar size they gave me. I never wore a shoe like that anywhere else.
Yeah.
They decided I needed a 12.5 double E width shoe.
Yeah.
Which is just a little odd, but not that odd anymore.
So then, what did you go off to basic training somewhere?
Yes, sort of. I still don't understand what it is. I think there were something like 153 of us in this inducted group that I ended up with. And all 3 of us were sent down to Fort Camp Robinson, Arkansas, to the engineers. And one fellow was sent to chemical warfare. I was sent to the medics, and the 3rd guy, I think, remained at Fort Snelling in some local position.
Yeah.
He had been a secretary to one of the congressmen or something, so I guess I let him stay home.
He had some strings that he
Something
pulled or something.
Yeah.
So at Camp Robinson, oh, you didn't go to Camp Robinson.
No, I was sent to, of all places, Brooklyn, New York. Brooklyn Army Base, which is right on the waterfront.
And what was that like? What was this, a basic training program then you started with, or?
Well, that's what it was supposed to be. This is where things got very strange for me. This particular place, the Brooklyn Army Base Terminal, I think it was about an 8-story warehouse which they took over, and a couple of floors served as barracks, and another floor had a mess hall and that type of thing. On that other net, it was an operating warehouse of primarily medical equipment.
Yeah.
We were only there for a few days, and then assigned to Fort Hamilton, which is again in Brooklyn, right by Coney Island.
And is Fort Hamilton where you like learn to march and all that sort of thing?
That's supposedly what we were there for.
Yeah.
But we were there for about 2 weeks, and then one of the friends and I were just laying around the barracks. Everybody else was gone, and somebody came in and announced that they needed 2 medics for this one ship. You 2 are it. Pack your bags and get up. I'm a medic? Please.
Well, had you had the classes and the training?
Yeah, for about 2 weeks. We were given, military training in the morning and schooling in the afternoon.
Yeah. So did you learn? Did you learn like you know, how to salute in the ranks and all that stuff during that time.
Yeah, theoretically, yeah.
So that's an unusual
well, like
route.
I say, the first thing we did is he said, you get down here, pack your bags and throw them on the truck. Truck took us down to a pier somewhere in the yard and put us aboard this theoretical converted civilian transport, which hadn't been converted to troop ship at that time. It was the SS Brazil, a beautiful ship really, that would normally plied its water to South America. The next morning we were at sea, and the commanding officer, this guy says, "Oh, what are your specialties?"
2 weeks of training.
2 weeks of training. Well, we'll find something for you to do.
So now you're in the regular army at this point as a medic, and then you're on a ship that's would it be considered a civilian or a Navy transport?
No, it was an Army transport.
Army transport
for that time.
Okay.
But it was a civilian transport that the Army had taken over.
Was it moving troops to Europe or
into Panama?
Oh, okay.
This particular trip was that.
And were they sending people down there to protect the canal or something?
Apparently so.
Okay. So did you have any duties then, where you were taking care of people on the ship?
No, we were just there sweeping up for anything that was broken. That was our duty.
Well, then you reached Panama, I assume, healthy,
Right.
and
And we were back in New York in probably about 3 weeks' time, I think, something like that.
did you come back on a ship?
Same ship.
Oh,
We left, we were carrying troops. We were part of the ship's crew. We ended up on back in New York, and back in our training, which they had a big discussion. What are we going to do now with these guys? They missed us 3 weeks. And somebody said that's fine. And just mark them as they attended.
oh boy, they were pretty loose with the.
Extremely loose. Extremely loose.
So did you do this for the rest of the war? Or did you have other things?
Well, the next thing was, it was only about a month later, and they signed to a Liberty ship, which went to Naples and then the Anzio beachhead.
Oh, okay. And were you on it then when the fighting took place, when they landed those guys at Anzio?
It was after that.
Yeah.
I mean, the fighting was still going on.
Yeah.
In fact, they put us ashore because the medical unit that had been on one of the big medical units had been pretty well wiped out.
Yeah. Well, that was a long campaign.
Yeah.
Well,
More history, you read a very dumb one, too.
Yeah. Well, the Naples, when you first pulled into Naples, was that harbor operating? I mean, it wasn't blocked with.
No.
Somebody had told me that the ships.
Well, there are a lot of sunken ships.
The Hitler tried to block that harbor with sunken ships. Yeah.
He did that all over the place, but it didn't last long. Navy or somebody got pretty proficient at getting those things raised and moved.
Yeah. What were the Liberty ships like? What was your impression of those?
Yeah, it was a nice ship. It was slower than that.
Yeah.
I think the top speed was something like 8 or 9 knots.
Was that built by Henry Kaiser?
Probably.
Those?
Probably that's what most of them were.
And it was a really quick production process.
And supposedly they made them in a day. That's what they say.
Yeah. But it was still, you felt it was a pretty good ship, as far as you could tell. Yeah. And so your duties in Anzio, what were you doing? Were you treating wounded?
Litter bear.
Oh, litter bear.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have to go up to the front lines, right where the fighting was?
Most of it was within the hospital.
Yeah.
Moving around.
What
Once in a while you had to go pick off.
What kind of medical facilities did they have in tents, or was there a hospital?
It was tents mostly.
Yeah.
I think it, an improvement of that would have been in these MASH units.
Yeah.
They showed up during the Korean War.
Yeah.
That was the next step up.
Yeah. And so you'd transport the patient to the tables and
Right.
get people
Right,
moved.
take them out, get them moved,
Yeah.
moved down to the waterfront if necessary.
So you were sort of nearer the water where the
Right.
ships were rather than close to any of the
Exactly.
fighting.
Right.
We had all the artillery barrages and all that moved away from.
No, that's what happened to this particular hospital unit.
Yeah.
Had been pretty well wiped out by artillery.
It seemed to me I read that in a book. They were describing that how horrendous. They're out there working trying to save these guys, and then all of a sudden the Germans opened up and.
Well, I'm sure it was accidental, but
Yeah.
or reasonable.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So how long were you in Anzio?
About 10, 11 days.
Yeah. And what did you do at that point?
Well, they put us on a small oiler, well, I don't know what you call it, small ship that would run fuel in between ports and all that,
Yeah.
to take us back to Naples. We didn't get back to Naples.
You didn't make it back? What happened?
We got picked up by a couple of German aircraft and blew the front end up of the ship off. So we ended up in a drink for a couple hours.
So they sank the ship and you're out in the ocean?
Yeah, not far from shore. But
Who picked you up?
a British destroyer, and they took us to Naples.
Yeah.
And
Well, what was that like? Did you have like a Mae West and you're floating, or were
Yeah.
you? So you're actually in the water, not in a
Yeah.
raft or something.
well, there's debris and rafts around.
Yeah.
Just
Did
like
it
that.
catch on fire?
Oh yeah.
Did you have any injuries from that, or
I mean-
burns or anything?
I mean,
Yeah.
I think I broke my hand, but
How did you get off the ship? Did you have to jump?
just sort of stepped right off in the
Oh.
water.
Well, did you know it was going down? Was it?
Yeah, after we lost the front end of the ship, we knew it was
Yeah.
going down.
Well, now when it was two German aircraft that
Yeah.
attacked, did they drop like a 500-pound bomb
I don't
or
know what they
something?
dropped.
Huh.
Whether, it was something that they blew up on the front end of the ship, or
Yeah.
actually dropped a bomb. But whatever happened, it went down.
Well, that was a close call, being on a fuel ship.
Yeah.
With
At least it was empty. Of course, that makes it more dangerous, I suppose.
with the fumes.
Fumes,
Wow, well, that was a close call. So once the destroyer got you back to Naples, did you go back to doing medic work?
Yeah, it was a strange thing. My ship had already left Naples, so they were going to put me into the staff in the hospital there, and they had a need for a medic on a courier flight returning to the States.
Mm-hmm. So you got.
That's you.
I'm going to pause for just a
Sure.
moment for technical reasons. These things only run about half an hour, and then you start them and they can go forever, but you got to do that. So you flew back then,
Yeah.
and what kind of plane do you remember?
C-54, the equivalent of the DC-4.
Yeah. And was that to get you back to do more work in a hospital, or?
No, I think it was because they needed a medic aboard the
Oh.
airplane, because they were returning, I don't know, 25 or 27 letter cases.
Yeah.
They had a nurse aboard, and they had to put me as a medic aboard to
Yeah.
take care of the scud work.
Yeah. So what kinds of things you'd have to clean up, and did you give them IVs or something?
Whatever.
Or
No,
they took care of all the medical end of it.
we gave a lot of shots, a lot of booster shots, that type of
Yeah.
thing to people, but they were pretty loaded with that on the way back.
They certainly kept good track, I think, at least from my impression, of what shots people got during the Second World War.
Oh,
'Cause
they were very good.
I looked at the discharge papers for my father, and it says all the stuff that they gave him, you know, and so they must have been real careful of keeping documentation and the records.
If you got one and they didn't get it recorded, you got another one.
Well, what kind of technology did they have? I suppose they had, what, sulfa drugs that they could use?
Sulfa was the big thing then, yeah.
And that was what, like a pre-antibiotic to keep bacteria down?
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah. And penicillin, was that in...
It was just coming into vogue
yeah.
at that time, but we didn't see much of it until, well, actually at the end of the war.
Yeah.
Then you saw quite a bit of it.
Was that developed during the war, penicillin?
I don't know, it must have been earlier, but it didn't come into general use very much.
And then I suppose they had morphine
Oh yeah,
available. Yeah.
Oh,
So the C-54 got you back to the States.
Yeah.
Then what did you do?
went back to basic training.
Really? They had more training?
Yeah, they wrote off some more weeks.
Yeah. Was this in Brooklyn or?
Yeah, about Fort Hamilton. It must have just been done about that, with the so-called basic training about that time.
Yeah. And was it, what kind of training was it? Just first aid type things?
Yeah, basically military training in the morning and the first aid type of things in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Would be the equivalent of, you know, I don't know.
Did they let you off the base to see
yeah.
New York or anything?
Yeah, they're very good about that.
Yeah.
That's
So
why
what would you do for recreation, you know, during that time?
most of the time we'd head down to Times Square or something.
Yeah.
Something like that. They had several canteens around down there.
What was the like the USO active?
Yeah, USO was around.
Did you ever see anybody famous
Not
during the
really.
war?
No, not really.
Like movie stars or any of that?
Well, I ran into Red Skelton once.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to talk to him or you just
Oh,
saw
yeah,
him?
yeah.
What was Red Skelton like?
Very much like he is. Very, just a nice guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And Joe Louis was another one.
The boxer?
Yeah, played ball with him. Softball
Really?
with him, yeah.
You played softball?
Yep.
With Joe Louis?
Yep. He was on the other team, but. And our, one of the officers in that group was probably responsible for him being around there was Braddock.
Was who?
Gentleman Jim Braddock.
All right, now you
Wow.
got to realize I wasn't born till 9 years after like the end of the war, so
All right.
I must be out of touch with the.
He was, I don't know if he ever became a, well, they made a movie of
Gentleman
recently,
Jim? Yeah.
recently. It's been a movie of his life and stuff.
Oh, okay.
And he was a foreman of longshoremen, foreman on the piers and whatnot. And they brought him into the army as I believe he was a captain, if I remember right.
Gentleman Jim Braddock.
Yeah.
Well, now I don't know why I don't know him, but I guess I missed something. And they made a movie.
I call him the Quiet Man, no? That isn't what it is. I can't remember the name of that movie at all. But
Well, I'll have to look that one up.
sort of a movie of his life.
Yeah. And you met him.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and then what was the circumstances? Where
Oh, I got reamed out by him.
what was this?
I don't
Story.
remember.
Was he in the service then?
Yes, he was a captain.
So he was sort of in his role as captain in the army when he
Right.
was talking to you, and you had done something bad, and
Apparently it did.
he was upset by it. Okay, so then you finished your basic at Fort Hamilton?
Yep.
Okay, what did you do at that point?
I got another ship, I think.
Yeah. Which ship was that?
Marine Fox.
That was the name of it?
Yeah, SS Marine Fox. Brand new ship. Was originally the hull was laid down to be a tanker, and they converted it for troop carriers. So we carried, I don't know, something like 600 or 900 people on the ship, something like that.
Where was it going?
It was going to England,
Oh.
and Liverpool.
So did you do transatlantic crossing in that?
Oh,
ship?
no.
And was this in a convoy, I assume?
Up there in Conway then, yeah.
What was it like crossing the ocean? Did they still have submarine threats, or was that pretty
I
controlled?
guess so, but I never heard of any of them.
Yeah, you didn't have any
We
problem.
had a couple of, I would swear they were drilled, probably,
Yeah.
but they maybe thought that somebody, one of the escorts had seen her in a submarine or something.
So did you have like destroyers or small carriers or?
Destroyers and this particular convoy, I'm thinking about in what they call those baby flat tops.
Yeah.
They were converted freighters that, I don't know, about had 6 or 10 airplanes.
So, well, now was a baby one the same as the escort carrier, or was that a different?
Well, I suppose it's about the same thing.
Because the escort carrier, I think, was just a straight deck with.
That's all they were.
Yeah, and it was for making sure the troops got across the ocean.
Right, it was strictly based primarily for convoy protection and
Yeah.
anything else.
Did you see any destroyers throwing depth charges off or any of that sort of thing?
No, never saw that.
Did they zigzag on the way, or?
Yeah. The
Yeah.
whole convoy did. Which not sure how they control that.
Yeah. Now, when you were transporting that number of troops, did they get like seasick, and were you dealing with those kinds of problems?
Yeah, I would say probably 30 or 40% would get seasick,
Oh,
and
that's
they
a
get
lot.
down to about maybe 10% would be seriously seasick, and they get down to maybe half a dozen guys that you end up feeding intravenously for a while.
Did you have any problems with seasickness on any of your?
Only the first trip I ever took.
Yeah.
And the first day out of port, when we went to Panama. I don't know, it was got choppy or something. Like the doctor aboard there said, just forget it, Pete. It's all in your head.
Well, could you get used to being seasick, or were you always seasick once you got sick?
Some people, once they got sick, were sick, period.
Yeah.
But others would get over it. And in my own case there, other than that first day at sea, where I got a little sick, after that I never was sick again. And I should be, even though it got into some ridiculous weather.
Well, now it seems to vary. I've talked to pilots who never got airsick, and I'm one of those people who, on a crossing to Catalina Island, which is only 2 hours on a large ship, would get seasick. So I can't imagine being the poor guy that would get seasick and be sick the whole time to England.
Oh, that'd be terrible.
Yeah. How long was the crossing?
Well, let's see, on the Fox it would have been about probably 7, 8 days.
Yeah.
Maybe a little longer than that.
Did you run into any bad weather on that?
Not that
Yeah.
big trip.
Okay, so then you arrived in England. Did you stay in England or get
No.
off the ship, or?
No, we turned around fast, headed back, but bringing some casualties back, not many.
Yeah.
Probably 100 or so.
Was this in 44 or
It would have
45?
been 40. Yeah, 44.
44. And so you returned with about 100 more serious casualties. Was it the most serious casualties came on ship, or did they fly the really bad cases
It
in?
really depended on what they were.
Yeah.
At that stage, again, most of them were Air Force people
Oh,
before the landings.
so the 8th Air Force casualties
Days
from
of
the
19,
bombing runs. Yeah.
I think it really depended upon the injury.
Yeah. Did you get to know people? I mean, did you have regular people that you saw when you were doing these cross-Atlantic?
Not really.
It was a different
Just
group.
a group.
Yeah.
if you stayed on the same ship.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you know, you'd make a quick trip across and be back and you'd be off.
Yeah.
And they have you on a different ship right away.
Did they have burials at sea or anything like that on those? So they all made
I
it?
never run into that,
Yeah.
but I'm sure they must have.
Yeah. So then you arrived in New York? Is that where the...
Probably New York.
Yeah.
Most of the time we ended up coming back to New York.
Yeah. And the casualties were taken off the ship and then transported to a hospital? Yeah.
Hospital in Staten Island. And then distributed around the country.
Yeah. So did you do other crossings with or what was your next
Next one
duty?
was back on did I stay on the Fox? I think I stayed on the Fox. And that's when the landings in Europe occurred.
Oh, D-Day, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we were at Utah Beach.
Okay, so that's sort of
the second or third day after the landings.
and that was sort of the more northern part of that Normandy
Yeah,
Beach.
yeah.
So on the second or third day was where they had gone inland a bit with
Yes,
the
right.
actual front.
Yeah, they got off the beach.
Were you pulling the casualties off from that campaign?
We would have, but they didn't. We didn't get anywhere.
What did they have you doing? Were you just staying offshore for?
Just staying offshore until we could unload the troops that we had.
Yeah. Now, did they put up a artificial harbor or something to get those troops off, or did you send them in on a landing craft?
They went in on landing craft.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's for the. I know they sunk ships around one of their harbors or whatnot. I don't know too sure what it is.
Well, the British, I think, had sunk some pre-made, way to access to get the people on shore.
I saw a piece on that the other day on television. That was interesting.
Well, I think they had two of them, and then the weather wiped out one of them eventually, and then they had one functioning, and the big ships could tie up to it, and then download the trucks.
The week after the landings, there were 3 or 4 days in there that were just wicked weather. Doing anything.
Yeah. What did Utah Beach look like? Could you see the beach?
I couldn't see it.
It was too far off?
Anchored off 5-6 miles off the beach, so you don't see much.
Yeah. Were there a lot of other ships around your ship?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I do remember that there was I don't know what it was. I think it was an American ship, and maybe it was a British ship at the back. One of the old battleships that was patrolling another 3 or 4 miles out to sea.
Yeah.
Would be firing over it then.
Oh, is that right? So the support of the troops went over, right over your ship, huh?
Well, over a lot of them wherever you were.
Yeah. Was that pretty loud, I suppose?
Well, it's different. You get I don't know, it's hard to describe. More of a whirling noise that gradually, it gets louder as the shell apparently approaches, but then fades away quite.
So as the shell explodes out of the battleship, then it's kind of got a whirling sound that kind of increases, and then you lose it as it goes away.
Yeah.
Huh.
I have no idea what it was, but
well,
that's from a distance too.
They must have had a big shell with a battleship firing.
14 or 16 inch.
Yeah.
That's hell of a big shell.
So the troops did they go over the side like on a rope?
Yes.
And then got into a
landing craft.
Did the landing crafts? How did they get there? Were they carried, or did they come across the channel in a landing craft, or how do you get a landing craft?
I think most of them were carried out.
Oh, okay.
The smaller ones, anyhow.
Yeah, and then
there were about 3 sizes of.
Oh. Okay.
But the small ones were obviously carried on something.
Yeah. And then they would arrive on the side of your ship and they'd crawl off onto those and head off.
Yeah.
So you were there the second or the third day. How long were you stationed there?
Just a couple of days.
Yeah.
So we got rid of our load.
Did you have to pick up wounded or?
No, they sent us to, I guess they didn't need us. Or it got too, probably it was too rough those couple of days to try and load from a landing craft back onto the ship. But there were a couple of hospital ships around.
Did they have, sometimes in these pictures they show something that looks almost like a blimp that was, it's an anti-aircraft thing with cables?
Oh yeah, there were some of them around.
Yeah. Did you ever see a German airplane or?
No. Not then.
They had air superiority, their supremacy over the beach then.
Yeah, there were none over there.
Yeah. How about American airplanes? Did you see those flying?
A lot of them.
Yeah. Now, did you see like P-38s or were they bombers or what kind?
Mostly bombers is what we saw.
Yeah.
But, because you know, all you do is really see the formations because they're flying relatively high.
Yeah. Well, as I understand, they told the guys in the P-51s and stuff, stay really high so you don't get shot at by our own guys. And the P-38s, everybody knew what a P-38 looked like, so they could be lower.
So they shot at them anyhow.
Well, did your ship have any guns on it or any aircraft?
Oh yeah, we had a couple of aircraft.
What, like
a
50 calibers or something, or 40 millimeters?
We had I think it was a 3-inch gun.
Oh.
On the stern, just one. I don't know what the hell they would have done with it.
Yeah.
But I think about every ship at that stage of the game, going across in Conway and whatnot, had a stern gun on it.
Did they have proximity fuses yet? I suppose they didn't use those in Europe yet. That's a little early for.
Yeah, I don't know. Could have had.
They were using those in the Pacific, but then they didn't want anybody to know about it. So I don't think they got to using them in Europe. But the ships might have, but they didn't use them until much later, the Battle of Bulge, because they didn't want them to fall into German hands. This technology where the shell itself would sense an airplane 70 feet away and blow up, and that was something the Germans and the Japanese never figured out during the whole war. But you probably didn't, I would guess, have that yet.
You didn't even know about that.
Well, so then you were there, and you were there a couple days, and the weather got rough. And then where did you go?
We stopped in Southampton. We must have picked up some casualties there. And then we were back in Conway, going back to, coming back to the States.
Yeah. Were you getting casualties from the fighting in Normandy?
At that stage of the game? I suppose they were, but I don't know. That would have been awful quick.
Pretty early, yeah. Well, the German casualties in the Normandy campaign, with dead, wounded, and captured, was over 600,000 Germans, just in the Normandy part of that campaign. So I don't know, how soon the Army casualties started coming back to the U.S.
I'm sure they were, some of them back there probably on the first day.
Yeah. So you took off on a convoy heading back to New York?
Yep.
Was it on the Marine Fox?
Yep.
Did they name these ships, like, was there the Marine Bear, and was it a naming system or something?
I suppose there was, I don't know.
Yeah. That's an unusual name for a ship.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you're back in New York with a load of casualties from post-Normandy, or post-D-Day, I should say. And what did you do at that point?
I don't really recall.
Did you
Well,
do a
maybe
number of
that's-
these trips
I
then?
bet you that's probably about the time there were four of us were sent to Indianapolis to go to surgical school.
Oh, okay. So this is about June or July of '44. You're in surgical school?
Yeah, I think so. In fact, it had to be a little later than that in the fall,
Mm-hmm.
because I remember trying to. They had us in small housed in small tarp-acre shacks with a big potbelly stove.
Was this on a campus or did they separate you?
No, this is on. I think it was the name of it, Fort Benjamin Harrison.
Okay.
In Indianapolis, and there was a big Army hospital there. What the hell was it? Billings General Hospital.
And then you were being trained to do surgery?
Yeah. You know, assistant surgery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what kind of things would you do? Handle the instruments or?
Yeah, they handle the instrument, put instrument packs together.
Yeah.
Just about anything that came up.
But you didn't actually have to like sew people up and cut people up or any of that in terms of the actual
No.
surgery?
No. Did a little of that later on, but don't misunderstand it. Not no big deal. But I see with all the salt air and whatnot, people get an awful lot of boils,
Yeah.
big miserable boils,
Uh-huh.
and there you'd have to lance them to get the cords out and that type of thing.
Now, a boil from salt water, is that because the spray gets on the skin and then
I don't know what it
it
is.
starts to irritate it?
It does, but then it gets hung up in the hair follicles and
Yeah.
stuff, and it becomes like an ingrown hair. You do dang boils and grow a cord, and it'd be like well, it looked like an apple core after somebody got done chewing on it.
So you could do real minor
Yeah.
procedures eventually with this.
Yeah.
And then how long were you at Billings General?
Probably 3 to 4 months.
Okay, and with the additional training, did they send you off to Europe or?
No, we sent us right back to Fort Hamilton, New York,
Uh-huh.
at the same place, and assigned us to ship again.
Mm-hmm.
And this time I know I was put on a Liberty, and now you can see what you mentioned doing minor surgery. On these Liberties, there would be 2 medics, maybe 4 people tied up with the transportation corps, which were responsible for the crew, and if you, depending on the size of the ship, you may have a Navy gun crew also. But other than that, it's all civilian crew.
Oh.
But in normal things like, peacetime like today, the purser on the ship would take care of most medical stuff if there weren't any doctors in there.
Yeah.
But they didn't bother to train anybody at that time, as long as they were spitting medics out the other end and could take that part. So I stayed on that Liberty for, God, it must have been close to 6 months.
So this is into beginning of 45, or?
Yeah.
And do you remember the name of that ship?
William S. Blum, B-L-O-U-N-T.
Oh. And do you know the story of who this person that the ship was named after?
I think he was a postmaster or something. I
A
really don't know.
distinguished postmaster.
No, I've seen that name.
It does sound familiar.
And down from the Alabama or Georgia,
Yeah.
Mississippi area,
Yeah.
I have no idea what it is.
So during the 6 months, were you doing transport duty with? And
Yeah,
then,
we went to the first trip. We went to Bari, Italy, Came back.
how did Barry? Did you say?
B-A-R-I.
B-A-R-I. Yeah.
It's on the, it'd be the East Coast of Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Probably somewhat, almost directly across the peninsula from Naples. And then came around to Naples. And we returned some troops from Naples on that truck.
Back to the U.S.?
Yeah, back to the U.S. And that time I think we went to Norfolk or Newport News. Maybe it was Baltimore.
And these were people done with their service, or were they
No, these were casualties.
injured? Yeah.
Yeah. And no, I'm not too sure where we went that time.
Well, during 6 months, you probably made more than one of these
I think
crossings.
Maybe 3 of them at least.
Well, you pretty much traveled the world during World War II, at least the Atlantic.
We saw a lot of water, let's put it that. That was the funny part, you know, when they drafted you, they got the opportunity to like be in the Army or the Navy. And I said I didn't think much of that running around on the ship. So I chose the Army.
They stuck you on a ship for most of the war.
Yeah, about 19 months at sea.
And then, so were you on board when the war ended in Europe? And
Actually, we were in very Italy again.
oh, okay.
You never saw anybody celebrate like the Italians.
Yeah, they were happy.
That was on VE Day. And we also happened to be in there. Come in on DJ Day.
Hello.
Hey.
I've got one for Dolores, and I dropped yours off at the nurse's
That's
station.
good.
So
Thanks.
all the receipts are right there.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
So for VE Day, did you get off the ship, or
No.
did you celebrate on the
No,
ship,
no.
or?
He preferred to keep us on the ship.
Yeah,
We figured it was going to be a wild time on shore.
yeah.
It was. But that, well, I remember at that time, what,
Let me interrupt you for just a second.
Sure.
I'm going to pause for technical reasons here for just a second. Yeah, so we were talking about VE Day,
yeah.
and that was what, I think May 8th or something
Something like
of 1945.
that. And I don't know why we were it, but they sent us out with a couple of line sweepers, and we were the first ship to end in Trieste at the end of the war,
Oh, okay.
which was still, I'm not too sure, but still in German hands, or
Yeah.
they had just abandoned the place.
So the minesweepers went in ahead of you, and did you pick up people there, or?
No, we just left half of our garden there.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what we were carrying. Probably general foodstuffs at that stage of the game, probably. Gargle.
So at VE Day, were people pretty ecstatic about the fact that they were tired of this war?
We were over there.
Yeah, yeah.
Not so much on the ships. No, and they figured that everybody figured it would now be heading for the Pacific.
Yeah, yeah.
It didn't happen.
So that ended before before you would be involved with any of that part.
Never got to the Pacific.
So after Trieste, the peace was going on. Did you stay in Europe, or did you come home? Or?
No, I keep coming back.
And when were you discharged?
May of '46.
Oh, so you had low points for some reason?
I had a lot of points, but I was essential.
Oh, okay.
I had to get the troops home.
Yeah. So you spent a lot of your time between the end of the war and when you got out transporting
Yeah,
people?
just running back and forth.
Yeah. And was it the same sort of duty?
Yeah, except you didn't have much of anything to do
Yeah.
because they were pretty good when they put a bunch of troops aboard to come home. They'd put a medical unit aboard with them, so we just sat around with our feet up
Yeah.
on the desk. And
Well, I suppose the
dogs
casualties
and
slow.
there weren't much then.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, did you get to meet any of the people that were being transported, or were they in a different part of the ship?
oh, yeah, I always did.
Yeah. So I imagine you
Yeah.
heard all their stories.
Right in the middle of my missed it. Oh, sure.
What did people do for recreation on a long voyage across the Atlantic? Did people, I don't know, what did you do with your time? That's a lot of time.
Well, if we didn't have any troops aboard, you know, we'd be doing most anything. Have a card game going or something going.
Yeah. Read books or,
Right? But we'd be intermingling with the crew of the ships
yeah.
too, so.
Well, you must have had a pretty good sense of how to run one of these ships with all that at that
Well, I
time.
don't know about that.
Watching how all the other people at work there.
You know, some of those crews got pretty good. And one trip I was on there where we were at least 6 months on that one trip, we got to know the officer crew pretty good. So they let you out of the bridge and
Yeah.
give you a word of what was going on.
Well, to be discharged in May of '46, that's an unusually long period after the end of the war. There were some people in the Navy that I've talked to that had long periods afterwards, but you were considered essential personnel.
Yeah. Yeah, they were transporting the troops home.
Were they still transporting like a year later,
Oh, sure.
pulling people
It took
back?
a long time to bring that many people home.
Yeah,
And also at that time, they probably were replacing most of the troops over there
yeah.
with the people that had been in basic training and stuff when the war was over.
So you were bringing troops both directions
Sure.
on these trips. So you got out in '46, then what did you do?
Went to school.
Did you have the GI Bill?
Oh, sure.